Vanguard, vanguard, we must lead.
African people must be free.
Vanguard, vanguard, we must lead.
African people must be free.
Uhuru, comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me study featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela. My name is Diakiese Lungisani, Station Manager for Black Power 96.3 FM and proud member of the African People's Socialist Party, and I will be your MC for this morning. Today's study will be a continuation for the reading Build and Consolidate the Party, printed in 1986. Though printed at this time, this pamphlet, as learned in last week's study and ongoing, is important to our revolutionary struggle. Coming from the 7th Congress held at the beginning of the month, the party has truly transformed the Black liberation movement and has permanently set the trajectory for the worldwide revolution. The path of freedom will never be the same. The African People's Socialist Party, the uncontested vanguard, continues to deepen the revolutionary process, as will be laid out in this reading. It is now my honor to introduce the one who single-handedly solved the remaining problems of the revolution and defined the course for freedom and liberation in our lifetime, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru.
Uhuru, comrades. As it was stated, this pamphlet that we're reading from, this is the second part of it. It's my intention to get through this pamphlet during the study, but it is one that is 32 years old, printed in 1986. And so much has changed between 1986 and now. The Constitution that will be referenced in this document has changed at least twice and perhaps 3 times. There have been other changes in the structure of the party, and I'm mentioning this because we will reference certain constitutional issues and some things about the structure which are not relevant today in the sense that those structural entities do not exist. Nevertheless, the essence of this document remains the same, and what we intended to do with this document remains relevant for what it is that we're trying to do today. We've just come out of our 7th Congress on the 12th of this month, October 2018, and the title of that theme of that Congress was African People's Socialist Party at Vanguard, Advanced Detachment of the African Revolution. And today we are really determined to continue this process subsequent to the Congress of helping members of the party to understand exactly what that means, how the party functions, what it is that motivates us in terms of the structure of the party, principles of party organization, etc. So we ended the discussion on last Sunday on page 22, and this is where we'll begin on the first full paragraph, in fact, the second line on page 22. We engage in criticism and self-criticism within the party in order to advance the interests of the revolution as expressed in the line, program, and strategical objectives of the party. The party must face its weaknesses soberly. The party must criticize its shortcomings and mistakes in order to correct them. It is only by facing up to contradictions, errors, and shortcomings that they can be corrected. Hence, criticism and self-criticism in the party are a method of correcting errors and calling attention to shortcomings, which might be detrimental to the party and to the realization of the party's program and strategic objectives. Unlike the petty bourgeoisie practice of catching, which is a practice of blame and avoiding blame that creates a fear of admitting mistakes openly and honestly, the party's principle of criticism and self-criticism is recognition that fear of admitting mistakes openly and honestly and a failure to correct them in time prevents the party from fulfilling our role as leader of the domestically colonized African working class and the toiling masses. Another firm African internationalist principle is ideological and organizational unity. This does not call for any kind of unity. The party is opposed to unity based on a reconciliation of opposing lines. The party's line is one which is based on a scientific appraisal of the requirements of the revolution at every period. And this is worth noting because sometimes we have comrades in the party who find reasons to really admire some party, some force, potential party member, and to bring them into the party or attempt to bring them into the party because they're nice people, notwithstanding the fact that they have an entirely different political line. And we've seen that recently, and there's one outstanding instance, certainly in the Mid-West, where someone has attempted to come into the party, though they belong to several different organizations. And as far as this person was concerned, they were all good organizations and all decent organizations. Therefore, it didn't matter that they had different political lines. But the party is opposed to this attempt to reconcile opposing lines in the party. It doesn't work. Ours is a line which must withstand the test of practice, and which the party as an organization, through its legitimate process and procedures, including the party Congress, has come to accept as the only correct line. Hence, the unity of the party is based on the party's line and not on a reconciliation of the party's line with some other line which may be imported into the party. And I think it's important for us to understand that. The basic party line, the one which reflects the general reality of the conditions of existence for Africans within the U.S., the line wherein a general description of the world and our place in it as domestically colonized subjects appears in every issue of the party's journal, The Burning Spear, and reads thusly. This is something that we talked about. We once had in every issue of The Burning Spear what we characterize as the basic party line. I'm going to read it. It's quoted here. All our work is guided by our understanding that our struggle for national liberation within U.S. borders is an integral part of the whole African liberation movement. That the African liberation movement itself is a part of the great contest between the ever-emerging forces of international socialism and the dying but not yet dead forces of imperialism. That the particular character of the African liberation movement within the U.S. is a struggle against U.S. domestic colonialism. That the struggle against U.S. domestic colonialism, that the destruction of colonialism led by a conscious Black Revolutionary Socialist Party will constitute the critical blow in the struggle for socialism within U.S. borders. And this is something, one of the reasons we don't use this as such as we have in the past is the fact that our goal is not to fight for socialism within the United States. Our goal is the total liberation of African people worldwide, globally, if you will, and the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people around the world. But we say that although this is not our goal, socialism is impossible without the destruction of the colonial pedestal upon which capitalism relies for its existence. And this is essentially what we were, the point that we were trying to make with this basic line. So we say the basic line, this basic party line, which we have expanded and elucidated to constitute 4 critical points of understanding comprises the party's worldview. Together with the party's 14-point working platform, the basic party line constitutes the African People's Socialist Party General Party Program. Hence, the general unity of the party is based on the party's basic party line, and our specific questions is forged through the application of our basic party line to specific points and the general party program as it is reflected in the particular issues and questions we are confronted with in life. Ours is a unity then that is based on consistent African internationalism. And obviously what has transpired over the years, over the last 32 years or more, is that we pay real attention to the 14-point platform of the African People's Socialist Party that can be used to apply to virtually every question that Africans are confronted with, certainly in this country. And then every Congress, the party votes on what will be our program for that period. That is to be found in the political report of what we consider the main resolution of the party. And also stemming from this Congress, there are other resolutions that inform our practice, our work, that come from the Congress. So as the advanced detachment of the African working class colonized within current U.S. borders, as, quote, that section which pushes forward all others and which has over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions and ultimate general results of the proletarian movement, unquote, the party must lead everything. This clearly challenges the liberal petty bourgeois ideas that the various social, cultural, and youth organizations which exist in our communities or on the campuses or in prison even are just simply organizations of the people which somehow stand outside and have no class character or political significance in the struggle for national liberation and socialism. In the past, the party itself on occasion succumbed to this liberal anti-revolutionary party petty bourgeois stance within the national liberation movement. This has led to the party abdicating our responsibility to lead mass organizations that the party has built to deal with fundamental questions of strategic value to our struggle. In more than one occasion, due to alarmist cries by the petty bourgeoisie, mostly African but often quote-unquote national, who screamed indignation that the party had the foresight and practical ability to lead our movement forward, the party has retreated to the detriment of our revolution. And I will give an example of this being a form of retreat because the African People's Socialist Party built in 1977, 1979 in particular, but following a mobilization we had in 1977 in Atlanta, Georgia, which was one of the first, if not the first, national mobilization that had been organized by what we call the pro-independent sector or the anti-imperialist sector or the revolutionary sector of the African liberation movement. We had a mobilization in Atlanta, Georgia, around the question of freeing Desi Woods, and Africans and others from various parts of the United States came to this mobilization. It was an incredibly successful mobilization. And stemming from this, an agreement was made between the party and some others who were part of this pro-independence, anti-colonial sector of our movement. Because up until the actual occurrence of the Free Desi mobilization in Atlanta, Georgia, most of them were skeptical, and some of them actually stood on the sidelines to see what was going to happen. It was only after this mobilization came out of Vine City in Georgia, 100 strong, that they saw that we had really resurrected the movement that they participated relatively significantly in this process, and some of them wanted to actually see what could be built out of that. And out of that came the whole concept of building a prison movement, a movement around Africans in prison. And the party agreed to take the leadership in this process and actually held a really powerful conference to make this happen in Louisville, Kentucky in 1979. And what was extraordinary is that there were sectors of the anti-colonial national liberation movement who came to that conference for the exact purpose of trying to disrupt it, bust it up, but it was successful nonetheless. And a unity agreement had been made that we were going to build this, and this was called the African National Prison Organization. We were going to do it together, and we were going to rebuild the anti-colonial movement. We were going to let this be an organization which all of us could participate in, despite the fact that we had different political lines, but we all united around being free from U.S. domestic colonialism, and that the pure abstract theoretical questions would not determine the unity, but the practical questions that we were trying to resolve, and we would initiate an organization that we could all unite with, and then in the process of doing that, we could struggle over the differences. And of course, it didn't happen that way, and immediately after this conference was over, a sector went into New York in particular and began to organize against what had just occurred. But not only did they organize against it, they used the very same documents that we had produced in the party to build the NPO. And this was an instance where we were trying to unite the entire anti-colonial movement, and we sacrificed a lot of momentum and a lot of our potential for building this thing to try to be, to make some kind of unity with these forces. And of course, that was one case. Another case was the African National Reparations Organization, ANRO, that was built by the party, despite the fact that we had, the objective was to unite different sectors of the anti-colonial movement again around the question where there was general unity, which was reparations. And again, the same thing happened, that the majority of the so-called anti-colonial sector of the movement did not participate, stood by as bystanders, and in later even went on to move to create a contending organization in the name of reparations after Ronald Wilson Reagan agreed to offer some pittance that was called reparation to Japanese people, and that made believers out of all of them. And so these were just two examples of how we have tried to bring the entire movement together, but sacrifice what could have been the real unity, although we ended up struggling to build and make ANRO, the African National Reparations Organization, successful, and for years and years and years did political work around that, but we sacrificed a lot of our momentum and others' political influence trying to maintain the unity of all of these forces who had pretended to have unity with us. Of course, we've come to understand that what this was a struggle against the African working class, that they saw in the party the interest and the power, the emergence of the African working class or its advanced detachment as a leading force. And this is the basis of the struggle that was made against us, and that has happened on more than one occasion. So we say that while genuine revolutionaries would have been self-critical for their inability to lead around all of the questions and issues the party had retrieved from obscurity, while genuine revolutionaries would have given all their support to the party, these petty bourgeois forces joined with all the forces of reaction in a great din of anti-party fervor. Today, the party has come to terms with the fact that not only must we not be apologetic for leading, it is our absolute responsibility to lead. So that's really important for us to understand, and for members of the party to understand, people in our movement, The party must help the mass organizations, the community organizations, prison collectives, and campus groups to work out the correct political line and to properly direct their activities toward political independence and African liberation and socialism. This is the party's task because all the party's work prepares it best for this for this responsibility, and because the party is the most perfected and the highest form of black working class organization and the highest expression of the people's will to struggle. Within the ranks of the party are the most advanced, most conscious representatives of the colonized African population, the black working class and the toiling masses. The representatives upon whose shoulders rests the ultimate responsibility for raising up the revolutionary, scientifically guided consciousness of the black working class. It is clear that the liberation of our people and the emancipation of our class cannot be won by just any kind of organization. It is even clearer that many existing organizations have absolutely no interest in making revolution, and that even some of the radical nationalist organizations are only willing to go so far. Excuse me. However, the role of political leader can only be fulfilled by the party as the highest form of organization for national liberation and the emancipation of the black working class. The role of the party as the political leader requires the recognition of the absolutely hostile relationship our people have to U.S. colonialism and the various forms of imperialist domination of Africans the world over, as well as to the irreconcilability of the class contradictions between world capitalism led by U.S. imperialism and the toiling masses of the working people of the world. I want to read that again. The role of the party as political leader requires the recognition of the absolutely hostile relationship our people have to U.S. colonialism and the various forms of imperialist domination of Africans the world over, as well as to the irreconcilability of the class contradiction between world capitalism led by U.S. imperialism and the toiling masses of working peoples of the world. That's what the party, the role of the party as the political leader requires recognition of this. So you won't find a time where it is possible for the African People's Socialist Party to see in the Democratic Party, even if it is led by one like Barack Hussein Obama, some meaningful solution to the contradictions that African people are confronted with. You will never see the ability of the African People's Socialist Party to ally itself with imperialism in the name of somehow advancing some interests of the African working class. Even if it were possible for the African people in the United States to have some kind of alliance with U.S. imperialism, even if that were possible, even if it were feasible for that to resolve some contradictions that Africans inside the United States have with imperialism, what that would mean is that we would find ourselves with an entity, a government, an expression of world imperialism that is working all the time against the indigenous peoples of this land, including the Mexicans whose land has been stolen, including all of those people now who are approaching the so-called border of the United States, chasing their own resources. It means that we would find ourselves aligned with imperialism, with white power. It is murdering and killing people in Yemen, killing and murdering people all over the African world, the Middle East, etc. We could never find ourselves being able to do that. There is no politic, there is nothing that could seduce us into a belief that somehow we can relieve or find relief for ourselves as Africans in the United States at the expense of the overall total destruction of this oppressive entity that is destroying the lives and the future for the masses of people around the world, not this party. We say that political leadership is a science and an art. It is not something that one has automatically. It requires skill and the capacity to quickly choose and change forms of struggle. Political leadership is a science and an art. It is not something that one has automatically. It requires skill and the capacity to quickly choose and change forms of struggle. V.R. Lenin, the successful Russian revolutionary, correctly declared, quote, "We are the party of a class, and therefore almost the entire class should act under the leadership of our party," unquote. However, within the domestically colonized population of the U.S., the two main contending social forces are the black working class, comprising 88 to 94% of the population, and the primitive black petty bourgeoisie, which generally speaking has an inordinate amount of influence presently due to the military defeat of the black revolution of the 60s. Its influence is also tied to one or another sector of the colonial white ruling class or the capitalist colonial state itself. I'm really hoping that this is understood, because we had a revolutionary movement that existed in this country, and we saw the emergence entrance of the African working classes concentrated in some of the political organizations that led that struggle and caused a profound crisis for imperialism that is responsible for the creation of entities like the SWAT teams, responsible for the militarization of police, what they call militarization of police organization in this country, which really means that the increase of the budget to the Pentagon so that it could carry out what is constitutionally an illegal act of policing the domestic communities, so that they have this phony thing that they call passing on surplus weapons to police organizations throughout this country, which is simply an expansion of the Pentagon budget, the war budget, so that it can include the fight against the domestic colonized people, such as our own movement. This is what has happened through that process. And it is the destruction, it is the death of even people like King and Malcolm, and destruction of the Black Panther Party that's responsible for every Negro politician that you see in office today. That's responsible for the apparent significance of Barack Hussein Obama. It is only because that the Black Revolution was destroyed, attacked. And then you have sectors of the African petty bourgeoisie preening and passing themselves off as meaningful leaders of the African community. And they can do that because the Black Revolution of the 1960s was crushed, was defeated, and it's been more than 2 generations since revolution has been able to successfully raise its head as it was able to do with our 7th Congress that was just held this month in St. Louis. So there is this appearance of power and strength because these are forces that are connected to the white ruling class or to the state. This is where you will read in the newspapers these wonderful stories where they create this false contest between the so-called left-wing political forces in this country that would hold up African so-called leftists or so-called progressives because they are black, notwithstanding the fact that they work against the interests of the African community and win favor with the bourgeoisie, including the bourgeois media. And on the one hand, on the other hand, anything that express an intent to change fundamentally the relationship that Africans have with white power is something that is attacked constantly, so much so that we have a situation where the certain sectors of the media, the most significant component of the media now, which you find with social networks and et cetera, working hand in hand with the United States government, including the Congress. They have declared that, telling all the peoples in this country and in the world that the struggle for black power, black liberation is illegitimate. Not just because the FBI has declared that there's such a thing as a black identity extremist, and which means that we domestic terrorists, but also because what they have decided is that any struggle that you can look at on social media, that's talking about liberation of black people and the horrors and terrors imposed on black people, indigenous people, the Mexican people who are catching hell with new military attacks, and anything that you see like that is probably something that's been done by the Russians or somebody else to divide our country leading up to what they call the midterm elections. This is the kind of stuff that's happening right now, and this is the thing that enhances the influence for a sector, the African petty bourgeoisie, sniveling quislings who work hand in glove with U.S. imperialism at the expense of our struggle and as a part of an assault on the genuine, legitimate revolutionary movement. And this is something that all of us should understand. And in so understanding, do not be confused by what the bourgeoisie say about us. That is not a reflection of who we are. We cannot allow them to define us, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on your local domestic bourgeois newspaper or television. Our relationship in reality is to be found, is to be discovered, is to be created in the African communities among the working class, where we must dig in and do the kind of work that's necessary for us to advance our struggle. So we say, in the past, when the politically activity and ideology of the black petty bourgeoisie was generalized as an anti-colonial struggle for democratic rights, the black petty bourgeoisie constituted a progressive influence within our movement. So at that time, where the activities and politics of the African petty bourgeoisie, I'm talking about your Reverend Chickenbone and all those other people who you know out there, at that time, when what they were putting forth, when their activity, their ideology was something that was struggling for democratic rights, when that's the main thing that characterized what they were doing, then they were a legitimate sector of our movement and a progressive influence within the struggle for national liberation. But at that time, so we say, however, with the victory of the struggle for democratic rights, which came as a concession to the black petty bourgeoisie and at the expense of the black revolution of the 60s, the black petty bourgeoisie realized its fundamental political aim and lost any historically derived progressive character it once had. So once they got civil rights and once they got voting rights, that was it. I mean, as far as any generalized progressive character that they had, there was no longer generalized progressive thing about them, because now they've got it. And so we become, that is to say, the interests of the African working class become as much a problem for them as the struggle to keep them from being able to get elected was before, what that they call the voting rights struggle or the civil rights struggle. So now they have as much problem and perhaps more problems with the African community, with those people who sag, with those people who want to go beyond the payoff that has been given to that sector of the African petty bourgeoisie. So we say, thus, the mantle of leadership, both for the struggle for national liberation and socialism, has fallen upon the shoulders of the most despised and feared black working class. Therefore, as the advanced detachment of the black working class, the African People's Socialist Party assumes, the leadership not only for almost the entire class, as Lenin talked about, but also for almost the entire people. Therefore, we resist any effort to reduce the activity of the party to that of a passive recorder of spontaneously developing events in the manner of some so-called revolutionary organizations whose theory or program does not require intervention in the practical struggles of life. In fact, as recently as yesterday, in the Central Committee meeting of the party here in the United States, we had to really reinforce that understanding within our own ranks. Our entire mission and the basis of our existence is to become actively involved in life. Our task is to mold the consciousness of the working class and all the toiling masses, and to permanently lead the revolutionary struggle of the masses for political independence, African liberation, and socialism. The five fundamental principles of party leadership are: 1, democratic centralism as an organizational principle of party building and practical activity. 2, collective leadership as the highest principle of party leadership. 3, selection of cadre and verification of task fulfillment as main content of party's organizational work. 4, the unity of theory and practice and of organizational and ideological work. And 5, party leadership of the mass organizations of the colonized and working people. These are the 5 fundamental principles of party leadership. African internationalist standards of party life are embodied in the party constitution and the general party program. These are the most important documents of the party. The general party program, and here we talk about how it was understood 32 years ago. It consists of the basic party line and 14-point working platform. The 14-point working platform still work, and in general, even the basic party line that we established is correct, with the difference being, of course, we don't assume that our goal is fighting for socialism within the United States. We've said what our goal is in terms of the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people worldwide, and that we also have a political report that is produced at every Congress that informs our practice, our work, along with the resolutions that come out of the Congress as well. So the General Party program provides a scientific basis for the main task and aims of the party and is the foundation of ideological unity. And it's important to say this because we are coming out of a period, when I say we, I'm talking about people, African people, who faced with struggle in the United States and most of the world, coming out of this whole period after 2 or more generations of the defeat of the revolution, after Che has been murdered, after Nkrumah has been overthrown, after Lumumba has been murdered, after pamphlets have been destroyed, after the co-founder of the African People Socialist Party has been killed, and revolution has been taken off the agenda, generally speaking. We have had a situation where the majority of the masses of African people have not been engaged in revolutionary political life. So we say that that African international standard of party life are embodied in our Constitution, the General Party program, and these are the most important documents for the party. The General Party program, we say what that is. The General Party program provides a scientific basis for the main task and aims of the party and is the foundation of ideological unity. And this is critical because we've come through this period where the bourgeoisie has raised up this whole notion that what Africans are doing, running around saying Black Lives Matter, blocking occasional streets and running occasional persons for office, but really kind of a left wing of the Democratic Party, they say that what's really great about this is because they don't believe in anything, that they don't have an ideological foundation, because they're just there and they're militant and they're really nice because there is no central leadership that's responsible for them. Therefore, they are this democratic expression of some kind of outrage among African people. They are a democratic expression of the interests of the African petty bourgeoisie and don't have a relation of African people, except the ruling class media promotes this whole notion of anytime something happens revolving around the police killing somebody or some white nationalist attack on African people, you break out your sign and say Black Lives Matter. That's not even a meaningful protest. To say Black Lives Matter, that's not a demand. That's not something that you can call on the masses to unite around. It doesn't give us any control or authority over our own movement. It doesn't call for any kind of change. It's not a demand for anything, which is why we have pushed all along that with this whole notion of Black Lives Matter as it relates to the police must be supplanted by a demand for black community control of the police. You say black community control of the police, it's a democratic demand, and it speaks specifically to the war that is being made against us by U.S. domestic colonialism, by its frontline forces, which is the domestic military force that's called the police in our communities. And this is also part of the struggle for state power that African people have to wage to change our relationship, and it's much, much more different than Black Lives Matter. And of course, you will not read of black community control of the police easily coming from bourgeois media because they like Black Lives Matter. And there's this debate of whether Black Lives Matter, well, don't all lives matter? Blue lives matter as well. And so this is just a bunch of inanities that take us back even further beyond the civil rights movement. At least the civil rights movement had some kind of demands that it could call for, but this doesn't even do that. So we say the General Party program does provide a scientific basis for the main task and aims of the party and is the foundation of ideological unity. And the community needs to have ideological unity. In fact, every colony of African people throughout the world must become conscious bastions of anti-colonial resistance. Whether that's Everton West in South Africa, as it's called, or whether that's in the 5th Ward of Houston, Texas. The party constitution defines organizational principles of party building. This is the Constitution. Standards of inter-party life, forms and methods of practical activity, and is the foundation of organizational unity. The party constitution states what the party is, what its tasks are, who can enter the party and how, obligations and rights of party members, a structure of the party, etc. The title of party membership of African Internationalists is a title of honor. The purity of the party ranks become a law of the party, even in the process of building and consolidating the party. And this is a really important statement to make, because the party will always be relatively small as compared to the mass organization that the party leads. The party, if you look at the number of people in the party, and then look at the number of people in the mass organization led by the party, you will see a huge difference in that. Our mass organizations comprise of hundreds and hundreds of people. That is something that we are aware of, and people see our mass organizations, expressions of them, various places around the world. And the party is often smaller than that. But what happens too often is that there are leaders of our party who will succumb, and members of our party who will succumb to the notion that we can bring this person into the party despite the fact that they have all these problems, all these contradictions, and don't really have the kind of unity that we need to have. And sometimes that's going to be true, because in an era now where most people will be coming into political life for the first time. They've never been involved in political life. They don't know how to be an organization. They don't know how to be organized. That's something we recognize, and everybody should recognize. And we will bring some of those people into the party who it is logical to assume that we can help to who develop into genuine cadre, into people who can really be good forces in the African People's Socialist Party. But too often, what we have is people who we bring in, even with the understanding that given every opportunity, they're just there and don't even strive to make any commitment to what it is that we are trying to accomplish as a party. That's not acceptable. And what it does is put a brake on the party process, because the party is only as strong and capable as its membership will allow it to be. And if you've got a membership that is permissive to the point that people don't really have to uphold the discipline and the principles of party organization, then you got a problem, and we got a problem. So we say that the title of party membership of African Internationalists is a title of honor. The purity of the party ranks must become a law of the party, even as we are in the process of building and consolidating the party. Every African Internationalist, every communist must live up to and bear with dignity the title of party membership. In the recent past, we have seen a lackadaisical attitude in some party members toward their membership. Not only has this attitude been reflected in such practical matters as an unwillingness or hesitancy in paying party dues and meeting other practical organizational obligations of membership, but there has also been a generally slovenly attitude toward party membership, which was often reflected in a general refusal to live up to the high principles of African internationalism and party membership. This contradiction within the party led us to declare in July of 1983, a little while ago, quote, the party must purge its membership rolls of all party members who prove unable or unwilling to exist and function as members in good standing as determined by the party constitution, rules of party discipline, and the organizational manual of the African People's Socialist Party. Raising the significance of the title of party members is connected with 1, correct selection of new party members. 1, correct selection of new party members. 2, increasing the responsibility of party members and strengthening party discipline. 2, increasing the responsibility of party members and strengthening party discipline. I mentioned that, I repeat that, because we've seen sometimes where people refuse to increase the responsibility because of a certain kind of distrust. But if you distrust the forces so much that you cannot increase their responsibility, then why the hell are you bringing them into the party in the first place? And we have to be able to do that because, again, people are going to come into the party who do not have experience in being organized or being inorganized. That's going to be an ongoing struggle. That's a struggle sometimes with people who are veterans of the party. But we have to be able to move toward increasing responsibility and strengthening the discipline of the forces in the party. And people don't have an opportunity to learn greater discipline if we don't give them anything to do. If the only thing they do is hang around, just be there. That's not what we're talking about. 3, drawing all African internationalists into active day-to-day party work and organizing party life so that it allows for initiative by party members. These are the things that we do to raise the significance of the title of party membership. And when we said number 3, drawing all African internationalists into active day-to-day party work and organizing inter-party life so that it allows for initiative by party members, the most fundamental thing that is associated with that is the Burning Spear newspaper. The Burning Spear newspaper means that every day, every member of the African People's Socialist Party has a responsibility to carry out day-to-day work for the party. This is one of the things that distinguishes the African People's Socialist Party. Our members must be in our communities, must be on the college campuses, must be everywhere African people are pushing the party's journal, the Burning Spear newspaper. This is the thing that even helps the masses of people in our community have confidence in a future of liberation, that there is a force there that they can join with or that they can support, who's all the time looking out for and advancing the interests of our people and our class. So that's day-to-day work that everybody should be doing. And this is an important aspect of work. This is the thing that helps to define the fidelity of every party member to the party, to the program of the party, to what the party believes in. This, along with paying party dues, this is active day-to-day life of the party. This is something that most people are not engaged in day-to-day political work, political activity, but our party members are. So that's important. So the question of membership is the fundamental question of party building. The question of membership is the fundamental question of party building. The party's composition largely determines which policy the party pursues, the manner in which the party is organized, the methods we employ to achieve the problems that arise. So party membership is a fundamental issue. It's not a little thing, as sometimes we have a tendency to do, and we know we got X numbers of members and we can check them off and this is who we are, but we are more than just those numbers. And I think it's really important for us to understand that. The party can successfully fulfill its role as mass leader only if it takes into its ranks none but the most advanced, conscientious, energetic representatives of the working class, whether they are workers or whether they are revolutionized, petty bourgeois, intelligentsia, etc. For example, I'm really proud of the work that we are doing right now in St. Louis, because there are people who are in the work in the party in St. Louis who don't call themselves communists, who don't call themselves Marxists, etc., but they do great work, and they have a deep and profound loyalty and commitment both to the working class and to the party. And these are people who we're going to have to recruit. We're going to have to bring these people into the party. Some of them self-identify as Christians, and there are some who identify as Muslims. And of course, this is a natural consequence of a revolution that's been defeated, and more than 2 generations of people have been taken out of revolutionary life. And so they find these other avenues to, quote unquote, do good for the community. They try. And most of the people who we're talking about are people who don't even go to the church or the mosque anymore, because the church and the mosque are not doing the good that they assume would occur. They come to the African People's Socialist Party, they come to the Uhuru movement, etc. Often quality people, and we're going to have to really look at them with the intent of bringing them, into the party, and of course as an expression of the ability of the party to take the politic of the party into our people and our community. And so I'm saying is that here, the party can only successfully fulfill its role as mass leader. It can do this only if it takes into its ranks none but the most advanced, conscientious, and energetic representative, working class, etc. Which means simply that people who come into the party learn how to become cadre, learn how to become leaders, learn how, as a consequence, that they may not have titles in the party as the representatives of this or that committee or this or that party organization as such, but they are capable of leading masses of our people, and these are people who can function in the mass organizations that comprise essentially of non-party forces. And this is why the content of the party is so important. When we talk about a membership of the party, these are people we can unleash in any circumstances that can provide leadership for the masses of the people. That's why it's so important for us to look at the question of party membership. Only those who are ready to merge their interests with the interests of the black working class is concentrated in the party, to stand up to any difficulty and to overcome any obstacle should be brought into the ranks of the party. For it is true that the strength of the party is not determined so much by our numbers as by the high quality of our membership, adherence to party principles, good organization, and discipline. The party must be viewed as a fortress open only to the most resolute and determined fighters who will submit their will to the will of the party. Writing of this principle on the quality of party membership, Amilcar Cabral, the revolutionary leader of Guinea-Bissau before his assassination by Portuguese agents, has this to say, and we quote, "So that is our principle. The best sons and daughters of our land must lead our party, our people. This does not mean that we have in fact always appointed the best, it says that, but does this mean that we have in fact always appointed the best? Some are worthless, but we are still going through an experimental phase." I mean, we've gone through the stage, we recruit people, and we're struggling to get the best. We do that, and we recruit some people who are absolutely, they're worse than worthless. They function as a negative influence. They're not just worthless, they ultimately provide problems for us. The truth is that we have always given persons the opportunity to improve. We have given all workers in the party the opportunity to advance, to show their leadership capacity. There are comrades sitting here who 3 years ago were raw recruits in our military training camps. Today they are members of our inter-regional committees or leaders of our armed forces. This shows to what extent our party has been able to open a broad path for our comrades to progress, for those who are most aware and most worthy to lead. Our struggle demands enlightened leadership, and we have said that the best sons and daughters of our land must lead. It is hard to know soon after they have come in who is the best. Following the principle we talked about at the start, trusting wins trust. And as some reveal their ability, we shall bring them forward. Then we shall see if they are in fact the best or not, if they improve or degenerate, unquote. We will mention here some of the constitutional requirements, constitutional conditions for membership in the party. And here it mentions certain articles in the Constitution which may not be correct. As I said, the Constitution has been revised, but the same principles are in the Constitution, even if they're in the very same places that we mention here. And so we say that the constitutional condition for African People's Socialist Party membership are found in Article 7 of the party's constitution. It's probably not Article 7, but it's there. Among the things established by this article is the fact that membership in the African People's Socialist Party is voluntary. It is a membership based on ideological unity and revolutionary commitment. Our membership is voluntary. It is based on ideological unity and revolutionary commitment. So we're not like the mafia or the CIA that puts a gun to your head and say that you have to be here. You don't have to be here. And this is something that all of us must understand. If somebody doesn't want to be in the party, we shouldn't do anything to restrain them from exiting the party. It is voluntary. And the reason it's voluntary because it won't work otherwise. We can't be successful if we've got a lot of recalcitrant or people who are just there because they somehow feel obligated beyond a unity with what it is that we are fighting for and the aims of the party. So we say that Sections 3 and 4 establish further requirements of membership. Section 3, all prospective members of the party must have studied the basic party documents, and that's true. Even today, our process requires that, and that they must be sponsored by a current member in good standing of the party, and everybody has to be sponsored coming into the party. And the prospective member must be brought to the entire membership of the party organization to which the sponsoring member belongs during a special membership meeting in an area of the country where there is no active party presence, the prospective the nearest regional party organization, etc. The basic point that's being made here is that everybody who comes into the party is a probationary member. It's a member. Doesn't mean person is not a member. That person is a member with all rights and obligations of a party, of any other member of the party. But there is a probationary period that every member has to go through, and that person must be sponsored. There must be a sponsor for that person. So that can help with any questions, issues, struggles, etc. that individual may have. And that's a 6-month period that this person is involved in. So I want to on page 30, we go to this quote from the party constitution as it read then, and where it was located then. Section 5, the party organization will keep the new member on probation for a period of 6 months. This probationary period can be waived under special circumstances by a majority vote of the leadership of the party unit. After the probation period has ended, the new member will have her work appraised by the unit leadership, and this person will become a member in good standing if all the requirements for membership have been met. If all the requirements have not been met, the new member will be counseled as to what she must do in order to meet the requirements and give an extension period upon which she must complete the requirements. And this is important because we have brought people into the party in the past who didn't know how to be in the party. They weren't bad people necessarily. They just didn't know how to be organized. They didn't know how to be in the party. And we didn't have a process established of who these forces could go to ask questions. Every time we have a party organizer on the streets with a burning spear in the communities doing political work, they're constantly running into questions and issues that they don't necessarily have an answer for. And sometimes they're challenged. And there needs to be a place where these persons can go and say, well, what about this? This is what was raised with me. And they need to be able to deal with these questions without becoming disruptive forces inside the African People's Socialist Party in the meetings and other things. And so we open this up so that there is a sponsor to whom this person can go all the time and who is meeting with this person on a monthly basis, on a regular basis, to evaluate the progress, who can has an ongoing ability to help this person understand any kinds of questions, issues, and struggles that might prevail. So probation is a rule of party life which permits the party to verify the qualities of individual new party members and for new party members to learn more about the party's rules, program, and procedures. Probationary members need special guidance and care from their party organization. Probation is a serious and not an empty formulation. Probationary members must have the benefit of discussion with older communists about rules and procedures and the party's program and campaigns. For the most part, this task will be generally taken on by the new member's original sponsor. So all of this deals effectively with the probationary members, with the whole concept of sponsorship. It's a very serious thing that we try to do in the African People's Socialist Party. So in the process of filling our ranks with new members, we don't do it in a haphazard and careless way. We actually do it in a way that helps to really support the person who's trying to come into the party, to give them the best ability to unite with the party and to protect the party and support the party as an organization when these forces are brought in as well. I'm going here, we say that each probationary member must have an opportunity to prove her worth by participating in party activities and will take up party assignments and benefit from political education. As political organizers and revolutionary politicians, party members exude great confidence and struggle against their own subjectivism, which has a tendency to make them timid or have their feelings hurt. This is not false confidence, but the confidence born from our ability to take the long view, which is extremely important because when we're out here doing this political work, you can be insulted by any number of forces, or you can run into real problems, contradictions. The police might run up to you and say, boo, or something like that. And if you can't have the long view, this stuff can really turn you around. So political organizers, revolutionary politicians, party members, we have great confidence and we can struggle against subjectivism and any tendency that might make us timid otherwise. We have the long view, and what gives us the long view really is an ongoing study and being able to understand the science of African internationalism, which makes a profound prediction of the victory of our revolution. This is a confidence that is constantly reinforced by studying party materials, the revolutionary history of our party and people, revolutionary materials, study which reveals the inevitability of our victory, which reveals that as accomplices of history, victory will certainly be ours. That's what we are. We are accomplices of history. You've heard of people being charged by the bourgeoisie, the bourgeois courts, that of being accomplices. We are actually helping in the commission of what they would consider a crime. Well, for them, the greatest crime that you can commit is revolution, to overturn the whole foul social system. And that's what we want to be accomplices. We want to be accomplices of history. But to say we are accomplices of history means that we understand some things about what it takes to make a revolution and the liberation of our people. We understand and have some confidence in historical materialism. In fact, we say all the time, historical necessity is something that we become more and more conscious of and aware of and able to understand. So party members reinforce their self-confidence as revolutionary politicians and political organizers by struggling against subjectivism, by contact with the masses, constant study, by doing day-to-day work, and by applying to themselves the revolutionary code of self-confidence, which are 1, a firm belief in the party's ideology, 2, an unending faith in the masses of our people, 3, a deep belief in the justice of our struggle, and 4, a certainty in the inevitability of our victory. A certainty in the inevitability of our victory. As political organizers and revolutionary politicians, party members are also armed with imagination, innovation, and political insight, necessary qualities, since one function of the revolutionary politician and political organizers is to arouse within the people an interest in making change, as well as consolidating and organizing the prevailing interest in change. As political organizers and revolutionary politicians, party members are creative and unafraid of trying something new. They have enough political insight to change a tactical strategy which is not working, even when it means an alternative tactical strategy would take twice the time or double the amount of work. Party members understand it is the responsibility of the revolutionary politician as political organizer to initiate movement for progressive change. The party organizer constantly seeks out, develops, and produces leadership from among the people being organized around any particular issue. Centuries of oppression, brutal enslavement, dehumanizing colonialism have left many of our people with a poor sense of self-esteem and self-confidence. The party organizer works in a way that promotes the sense of self-worth in our people. The party organizer attempts to allow the natural ability of the people to surface, giving everyone a responsibility. The honesty, commitment, concern, and dedication shown by all party members contribute to our effectiveness as political organizers and revolutionary politicians. That's why our word is really important. And when we say something to the people, we really have to live up to it. And if we don't live up to it or can't, then we have to come back to the people and explain it. We cannot ever be perceived as just these shyster politicians who are always lying, always promising things to the people, because people will take their experiences, because the people in many instances can be materialists, and they sum up their experiences. And if you act just like every other phenomenon that has crossed the people, double-crossed the people, then they'll treat you in the same way. They won't have any more confidence in you than they do your local Negro politician. These qualities allow the people to have the confidence in us necessary to accomplish our task as organizers, and to train others among the masses as organizers, to provide them with the necessary political education skills and other qualities for successfully organizing our oppressed and colonized communities. Party organizers give as much assistance as possible to community groups, but are careful not to do everything, understanding that grassroots forces must become confident in their own ability to solve problems and must be allowed to do political work and struggle, since real knowledge comes through struggle. Party organizers understand that the deep desire to advance comes to the community through struggle. The motivation to be free comes through struggle. And that it's a poor organizer who denies African people the opportunity to struggle. These qualities in party members are created and reproduced by the inner life of our party, by our inner party life. Ours is an inner party life characterized by the statement of V.I. Lenin that, quote, "This is the main point. Irrespective even of rights, we must not forget that every party member is responsible for the party, and the party is responsible for every one of its members," unquote. The guiding organizational principle of the African People's Socialist Party is democratic centralism. On the basis of democratic centralism, all lower party organizations are subordinate to the higher bodies. Regional organizations are subordinate to the Central Committee. District organizations subordinate to the regional committees. Party units, block, campus, shop, prison, town, etc. are subordinate to the local party committee, and local party committees are subordinate to the district committee. All decisions of the Central Committee must be fulfilled by the whole party. And decisions of the regional committee conventions and the regional committee must be fulfilled by the regional organizations of that region. All decisions of the district convention and committee are binding on the street, shop, and local party organizations of that district. A party committee or unit, bureau, throughout the whole of its activity from convention to convention, from conference to conference, from unit meeting to unit meeting, is not only under the leadership of the higher party committees, but also under the control of the whole party membership in the given organization. Democratic centralism combines inner party democracy with strict revolutionary discipline. Only centralized leadership can give expression to the interests of the entire party. Domestically colonized population and African working class, unite their energies and direct them toward the common aim of national liberation and socialist democracy. Only centralized leadership can do that. In order to lead the colonized African working class and popular movements, to unite and direct the efforts of all party organizations and working people toward the revolution, the party must be a cohesive, centralized organization with a single leading organ at its head, and with the lower units subordinate to higher ones and bound by strict party discipline. This goes all the way up to the International Central Committee of the party, which is the African Socialist International, that functions on an international basis. In fact, the next Congress that this party participates in 5 years from now will be the International Congress that will bring Africans from all over the world to a central location that has, at this point, being designated as South Africa. So the party structure is one that goes from a unit in a community, a prison cell, or a college campus. I say a prison cell, but I mean, like a wing in a particular prison, all the way up to the International Congress that establishes the basic general line for the entire African revolutionary throughout the world, in the way that the Universal Negro Improvement Association African Communities League under Marcus Garvey was able to do 100 years ago. And this is where the real power of the African Revolution is located, which is why the United States government and other imperialist forces around the world found it necessary to attack and destroy the Garvey movement. Of course, they did that with the support of the Communist Party USA, and with the support of African petty bourgeois forces like W.E.B. Du Bois, who has earned a place of honor in the ranks of the liberal petty bourgeoisie of the world, and certainly the African petty bourgeoisie. So I'm going to move to page 35 the second from the last paragraph that looks at the question of party discipline. And it says that party discipline is based on African internationalism, the class and national consciousness of its members, upon the conviction that without the minority accepting and carrying out the decisions of the majority, without the subordination of the lower party organizations to the higher committees, there can be no strong, solid, steeled party able to lead the poor, impoverished, colonized masses. This is really important. This is democratic centralism, that the bourgeoisie of all stripes hates it. And even we have seen people who perhaps have been in the party, who wanted to come into the party, but said that they have real opposition to principles of democratic centralism. And this is because democratic centralism inside the African People's Socialist Party represents the dictatorship of the African working class. And by that, what I mean is that this is a party of the advanced attachment of the African working class. This is the class that has to lead our movement to power and to actually seize power. It means that it is recognition that democracy is simply a form of the state, and that what we face with this thing they call democracy in the United States and most parts of the world is a democracy that functions in the interest of the bourgeoisie, of the neo-colonial puppets and stuff at the expense of the African workers and the oppressed and poor peoples of the world. When workers come to power, then what we are talking about is the state being in the possession of the majority of the people. And it means that the state, we recognize, is an instrument of coercion, force, that is imposed on elements of a society to protect the status quo, to protect the interests of a ruling class. And when the colonial bourgeoisie or the colonial white nationalist ruling class is in power, the state functions to protect that relationship. The relationship of the poor and the rich, the relationship between the colonized and the colonizer. When the oppressed comes to power, when the working class comes to power, and for the time that it functions as a state, and it will do that until the social system has been transformed so that there no longer is a material basis for exploitation, then up until that time, the state is under control of the working class. And that means that the coercion, repression will be exercised by the working class to prevent the ruling class from coming back to power. We say there's not going to be slavery anymore. There's not going to be colonial domination anymore. There's not going to be police killings of our children in the streets anymore. There's not going to be starving our people so that corporations can take our land and our resources anymore. And that means we will crush every attempt to bring that kind of system back. And inside the party, there is an ongoing contest that exists in the world as well. And that is the contest between the African working class. This is a party of the African working class. This is not some liberal party or some kind of coalition entity or some kind of organization where leadership by consensus. No, the African working class exercises leadership and authority in the African People's Socialist Party, and democratic centralism is the mechanism, the principle that guarantees that's going to continue. So inside the party, democratic centralism provides for the dictatorship of the African working class. The petty bourgeoisie will come into our organization, it always does. It always flocks to where one, it sees power attempting to emerge, or power having emerged, etc., and it comes there for its own selfish reasons, which can result in putting a brake on or distorting the struggle that we're involved in. So democratic centralism makes sure that doesn't happen, and by that we mean that it protects the interests of the African working class in making the revolution that we need. It is the dictatorship of the African working class inside the African People's Socialist Party. So we say that party discipline is based upon African internationalism, the class and national consciousness of its membership, upon the conviction, minority accepting and carrying out the decisions of the majority without the subordination of the lower party organizations to the higher committees. There can be no strong, solid, steel party able to lead the poor, impoverished, colonized masses. This discipline is based upon the acceptance of the party program, constitution and rules of party discipline, and in the confidence of the membership in the Central Committee. There can be no discipline in the party if there is no conscious and voluntary submission on the basis of a thorough understanding of the general party program and the decisions of the party. Only conscious discipline can be truly iron discipline. Only conscious discipline can be truly iron discipline. To assist in the discipline of the party, the following explicit rules of discipline were adopted by the party in 1974, and it lays out 20 rules of discipline for the African People's Socialist Party. And I think they're significant, and people should study and should read and study these. I think it should inform, our practice and our relationships with each other and with the world. On page 37, under the subtitle, Build to Win Independence in Our Lifetime, One People, One Cause, One Party, we say that these rules of party discipline are printed in every issue of the party's journal, The Burning Spear. The rules of party discipline exist as a supplement and reinforces the party's basic documents of law and order, the Constitution. Why do African internationalists attach so much importance to discipline? Because without discipline, there can be no unity of will, no unity of action. Our party is the organized and most advanced section of the colonized, oppressed, impoverished, laboring African masses, as well as the general struggle for socialism. So the party is the vanguard of the toiling masses in the international class war. In this international class war, there is the international imperialist class with its henchmen and helpers, the pacifists, reformist leaders like the NAACP, the SCLC, PUSH, etc. on one side, and the toiling masses and our allies on the other. And there are more modern versions of what was mentioned 32 years ago, like the Black Lives Matter movement, and I don't know what it calls itself today, but some variation of that. The international class war is bitter. The enemy is powerful. It has all the means of deceit and suppression, such as armed forces, National Guard, police, courts, movies, television, radio, press, school, churches, etc. In order to combat and defeat this powerful enemy, the army of the poor and impoverished laboring African masses must have a highly skilled, trained general staff, the African People's Socialist Party, which is united in action and has one will. United in action has one will. There's a time when we would hear, and we will hear it again, slanderous remarks made against the party and against similar organizations that we are sometimes to be called automatons, because if you ask a party member something in St. Petersburg, Florida, and then ask a party member something in Everton West in South Africa, you get the same answer, right? And so therefore, they must be automatons. Can't tolerate is the unity of will and unity of action. This is a deep and profound unity that's necessary to defeat the imperialist powers. That's why you get the same answer from the imperialists too. When you speak to their spokespersons, wherever they exist in the world, you see they come up with the same answers. They don't even have to have a meeting sometimes to come up with the same answers. Our party cannot lead the masses if there is no unity in action. Unity of will and action can be achieved only if all the members of the party act as one, are disciplined. If each party member should decide which decision of the party he or she wanted to carry out, if each member would only carry out those decisions which he or she liked and ignore those with which there was disagreement, it would be impossible to lead the oppressed masses in the struggle against U.S. domestic colonialism and capitalism. An army with that kind of leadership would surely be defeated. Unified opinion is essential not for unity in action, for successful work. of the African People's Socialist Party. What would happen if each party member would interpret a political issue individually and bring his individual opinion to the masses? The workers in a factory or the people of a community would get opinions on certain questions, as there are party members in the factory or the community. Unified opinion which is hammered out in the party by discussion is necessary in order that the party be able to lead the masses in their constant struggle. And that's what the Congress was all about too. It's to unify the opinions of the party all around the world. And what's so good about this, and even the fact that we put the rules of party discipline in every issue of the burning spear, is that this is not just something that we rely on ourselves to adhere to. We inform the masses, this is what we think about this view. This is how we are supposed to function. And then the people can act as disciplining agents to our party. And it does happen that people will knock on the door and say, you're supposed to believe in this and that, and I saw this person acting in this fashion that's contrary to what you say you believe in. And that's the way the people can participate in disciplining the party too, which is really important. So we talk about criticism and self-criticism, and say the most important criterion for loyalty to our party and the struggle of our people for liberation is the active fight for party policy. In order to achieve this, it is an absolute responsibility of party members to take part in discussion of party policy, to be in and criticism, and to adhere to rules of party discipline. Criticism, self-criticism, is the most important means for developing African internationalist consciousness and thereby strengthening discipline and democratic centralism. Criticism, self-criticism helps to discover all mistakes, deviations, shortcomings which separate us from the masses and to correct them. It helps us to improve the work of the party organization, to smash liberalism, subjectivism, and other contradictions, to expose the agents of the enemy in our ranks. That's really important, because that happens. Criticism, self-criticism, it exposes contradictions. You have to participate, and you cannot have a liberal entity, some kind of liberal organization that calls itself the African People's Socialist Party, that refuses to adhere to the principles of criticism and self-criticism. And you will find from time to time forces who hate criticism and self-criticism, and who will react and respond to criticism in a fashion that makes people timid and afraid to criticize them because of what they think they're responsible to be. But criticism is something that we should welcome, because it's identifying contradictions. We should welcome the criticism. We should be thankful that someone has criticized our errors and contradictions, or in the process of criticizing us, given us an opportunity to show them why they were wrong in their opinion. This strengthens the party. This gives the party an opportunity to correct this error, and also it strengthens the members of the party. Because if you indulge in criticism and self-criticism in the ranks of the party, it prepares you for the rest of the world. Because if you can't tolerate criticism and self-criticism among comrades who have sworn to have your back, to stand with you to the end, then how the hell can you handle criticism by some vermin, some agent that's out there who is waiting to criticize you at every opportunity? It strengthens us. It makes us good revolutionary forces. It smashes the tendency towards just a subjective knee-jerk reaction to every time somebody says something that is in disagreement with us or with our party. You become a better comrade. You become a better force. You become, closer to achieving the kind of stands and standards that would allow us to call you a genuine cadre. So we say criticism, self-criticism helps to discover all mistakes, deviations, shortcomings which separate us from the masses and to correct them. It helps us to improve the work of the party organization, to smash liberalism, subjectivism, and other such contradictions, to expose the agents of the enemy in our ranks. And the enemies can only be there, and they're only there to cause problems. If there's an agent in the ranks, it's there to cause problems. And if you don't have a practice of struggling against problems, it means that agents will be quite effective in our ranks. If you don't have a policy, you can get hung up on how you like somebody or et cetera, and then too timid or too liberal to make a criticism because it's your friend or it's your lover or somebody you like, and it means that you are inviting serious kinds of problems, manipulation of our process. Agents can come in. I think Malcolm X was probably killed like that in terms of people able to go into the organization and raise kinds of questions that weren't necessarily on the political agenda, to get even organized people in the organization to go and do things that they would not necessarily have ordinarily done. We shouldn't have that kind of situation existing. The policy of criticism, self-criticism, is a first-off policy within the APSP. As a revolutionary party, the APSP is representative of the new and progressive historical forces moving to replace old and reactionary forces. While we represent the emerging new forces, we must continue to struggle against the old, dying, and reactionary forces, for they are still stronger than we are, although they are dying. Indeed, revolution itself is a part of an historical process whereby the will of the people is asserted upon historical forces in a scientific and organized fashion in an effort to influence and escalate the development of the new, obliteration of the old. Inside our party, there is also a struggle between the old and the new. This struggle within the African People's Socialist Party is the response to internal contradictions. However, there are two types of contradictions. The contradictions between the African people and our enemy, imperialism, are antagonistic contradictions and can only be resolved through the ultimate destruction of one or the other. That's an antagonistic contradiction. However, the contradictions within our party are non-antagonistic contradictions that must be resolved through education and reasoning. And this is based on an assumption that in our party there are not agents who do represent antagonistic contradictions, but we can't discover that unless we employ principles of criticism and self-criticism. The struggle between African people and our enemy is a struggle between imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism on the one hand, and national independence and socialism on the other. It is a struggle between the oppressed and oppressor, between the rich exploiting slave masters and the poor exploited slaves. Our party is an instrument of African people. Its purpose is to lead the struggle to resolve the contradictions between our people and the enemy, contradictions which can only be resolved through smashing the enemy to oblivion. For the motive force of our enemy's existence is exploitation acquired through our colonial oppression. All the members of our party are united around the single need to free our people through smashing imperialism in any of its forms. The contradiction within our party, then, are contradictions which affect our ability to liberate. The contradictions within our party, then, are contradictions which affect our ability to liberate. They should be resolved differently than those between the people and the enemy. All contradictions must be struggled against. The difference is how different contradictions must be struggled against differently. To struggle successfully against contradictions, we must know the nature of a contradiction, whether it is antagonistic as between the people and the enemy, or not antagonistic as within the people's party. Since contradictions must be struggled against, and since there are contradictions within our party, we must wage incessant internal struggle. However, our purpose for struggle within the party is not to destroy, but to unite. Therefore, we must struggle differently within our party. Generally speaking, the contradictions within our party are caused by the difference in knowing and not knowing, correct ideas and incorrect ideas, proper actions and improper actions, and doing and not doing. Our methods of resolving internal contradictions must be resolved through persuasion and education. For this is the proper method for resolving non-antagonistic contradictions. This method must not imply that we do not have to struggle just as diligently against contradictions within our party as we do against those existing between the people and the enemy. Our policy of criticism and self-criticism was inaugurated within our party for the express purpose of guaranteeing continuous struggle against internal contradictions, and also as our tasks grow in number and our activities increase in importance, it becomes increasingly necessary that we remain alert, prepared to recognize and resolve internal contradictions. We do not have that much time left. I want to move beyond this section, and I want to go to actually on the same page, on page 41, in the fifth paragraph from the bottom that begins, another principle of the inner life of our party is the principle of collective leadership. And the theoretical basis for this principle of inner party life is the African Internationalist teaching that which reveal the people, the masses, in the struggle to produce and reproduce real life as the makers of history. See, the theoretical basis for this principle of inner party life is the African Internationalist teachings, which reveal the people, the masses, in the struggle to produce and reproduce real life as the makers of history. Collective leadership follows from the nature of our party, from its function as the collective political leader, organizer, and teacher of the working people, as the embodiment of the concretization of the will of the African masses to achieve total independence, African liberation, and socialism. Collective leadership is composed of two inseparable parts. One, all major decisions of a unit or party committee are made by the whole body and not by one or two members of that body. Two, each member of the unit or committee is individually responsible for carrying out not only the decisions concerning herself, but of the unit or committee. If one of the two conditions is missing, we are faced with the problem of bureaucracy or looseness in the organization. If the members of an elected committee do not participate in the hammering out and discussing the steps to be taken by them, but only the organizer and another leader makes the decisions, the carrying out of the decision will be mechanical. On the other hand, if the members are not held individually responsible for carrying out the collectively made decision, the leadership will be narrowed down to one or two members of the unit. And the proper African Internationalist method of working out, we go through this, and I think these are examples that people can use and to fight for a collective leadership inside the party. I want to move forward, however, because there's some other, a couple of other principles that's really important, and we don't have that much time. So we say that, and you should read this because it's really important, and it brings us examples and positions from parties, revolutionary organizations, and individuals who have succeeded in actually making revolution. For example, we look here on page 47. There's this long quote that comes from V.I. Lenin in terms of cadre and the significance of cadre, which is the hard core, the real essence, the backbone of the Revolutionary Party. And if you look at the third complete paragraph from the top, on page 47 it reads, these are forces which our party consciously and consistently struggle to produce. This is what we're talking about. These are the cadre spoken of by V.I. Lenin, the Russian revolutionary leader, when he stated that, quote, without the dozen tried and talented leaders, and talented men are not born by the hundreds, professionally trained, schooled by long experience, and working in perfect harmony no class in modern society can wage a determined struggle. And he continues, I assert that it is far more difficult to unearth a dozen wise men than 100 fools. This position I will defend no matter how much you instigate the masses against me for my anti-democratic views, etc. As I have stated repeatedly, by wise men in connection with organization, I mean professional revolutionaries, irrespective of whether they have developed from among students or working men. I assert, one, that no revolutionary movement can endure without a stable organization of leaders maintaining continuity. See? No revolutionary movement can endure without a stable organization of leaders maintaining continuity. How about 46 years of continuity? Stable organization. Two, that the broader the popular mass drawn spontaneously into struggle, which forms the basis of the movement and participation in it, the more urgent the need for such an organization, and the more solid this organization must be, for it is more easier for all sorts of demagogues to sidetrack the more backward sections of the masses. That's what we're looking at. I mean, right now. And that's why there's this hostility and struggle against the party that comes in 1,000 different ways. Some are, few of them at this point up front, but they are there, and they will create diversionary kinds of movements and activities to draw the people away from revolutionary activity. And these are the demagogues that we are talking about. At minimum, that's what we can characterize them as. They could also be characterized as charlatans, some of them, not all of them. But we know the charlatans of some of them, by name. They promote themselves, in a way that it's easy to see them. Three, that such an organization must consist chiefly of people professionally engaged in revolutionary activity. Four, that in an autocratic state, the more we confine the membership of such an organization to people who are professionally engaged in revolutionary activity and who have been professionally trained in the art of combating the political police, the more difficult will it be to unearth the organization. And five, the greater will be the number of people from the working class and from other social classes who will be able to join the movement and perform active work in it. And then he says further, we must have such circles, trade unions, and organizations everywhere in as large a number as possible and with the widest variety of functions. But it would be absurd to and harmful to confound them with the organization of revolutionaries. Let's go back. We must have such circles, trade unions, and organizations everywhere in as large a number as possible. But it would be absurd and harmful to confound them with the organization of revolutionaries, to efface the borderline between them, and to make still more hazy the all too faint recognition of the fact that in order to serve the mass movement, we must have people who will devote themselves exclusively to what they call social democratic activities, and that such people must train themselves patiently and steadfastly to be professional revolutionaries. And this is the African People's Socialist Party. So I want to just read, we don't have any time now. We say on page 50, let me see, I think that on the bottom of page 49, in fact, the last line, one of the factors which provides for the development and discipline of party cadre is the party principles of verification of task fulfillment. Verification of task fulfillment. Some party leaders have shown some timidity around the question of task verification. This liberalism has also been contained within some, with some negativism on the part of some cadre when attempts to combine with some negativism on the part of some cadre when attempts at task verification have been made in the past. However, this liberalism on the part of leaders and negativism in cadre must be totally overthrown now. Quote, to test men and verify what has actually been done. To test men and verify what has actually been done. This again, this alone is now the main feature of our activities of our whole policy. This is us coming out of this Congress that we're talking about, to test and to verify what has actually been done. That is, and so say work or task control and/or verification is a necessary function of leadership. The fact is no resolution will ever change anything without the organization of its fulfillment. Verification of task fulfillment disciplines our cadre, raises the sense of responsibility to them, and is an instrument of ongoing cadre education. And verification of tasks, let's see, this most important source of the party's strength, the most important source of the party's strength and invincibility is our permanent links with the people. In this regard, the party is unlike any other party within current U.S. borders. It is a feature of the party's identity which most annoys liberals and reformers who claim revolutionary credentials. It is a feature of the party's identity that rejects political connections and comfortable arrangements with respectable and responsible politicians and loyal oppositionists as substitute for the real power which comes from a real independent relationship with the black working class, made conscious of its birthright and revolutionary historical mission. Thus, there have been occasions in recent history when large sectors of the organized petty bourgeoisie posing as communists have been extremely upset with the party which has considered disruptive, which they consider disruptive because of our refusal to depend on a strategy of relying on a sector of the U.S. imperialist Democratic Party or Congress for resolution of the contradictions driving the peoples of the world into a greater state of poverty, desperation, and general spiritual and material deprivation. Instead, they have chosen to rely on the ranks of the masses. We have chosen to rely on the ranks of the masses, regardless of how difficult it has been to reestablish such links with a demoralized and disorganized working class sector of our community subsequent to the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s. So I'm going to leave it there, comrades, and call upon you to really read and study this document, recognizing, as we mentioned earlier, there's some changes that's been made over the last 32 years in terms of the Constitution and some structures in our party, but the basic principles remain solid. And uhuru.
Vanguard, Vanguard, we must lead.
African people must be free.
Vanguard, Vanguard, we must lead.
African people must be free.
Uhuru. Let's salute our leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, for this powerful study. Uhuru. We would like to acknowledge our viewership. We have comrades viewing from Brooklyn, New York, North Carolina, Ghana, Mexico, Chicago, Kansas City, Hawaii, Huntsville, North Carolina, and St. Petersburg. It is now time to open up for questions from our audience and online viewers. We want to appreciate everyone who's tuning in via Facebook and YouTube, and also appreciate all of your engagement. Because of time, we want everyone to know that if your question wasn't answered, one of our moderators will correspond with you and make sure that the chairman sees your question. We will now go ahead and open it up. We have some questions from online, Chairman, and the first one comes from Kenyon Crosby in Orlando, Florida, and it reads, Conservatively speaking, there are over 40 million black folks in the continental USA. Assuming a 1% capture rate would be a force of 400,000. This would be a formidable political and military force. Is the party too focused on the micro level?
Is the party too focused on the micro level? I don't understand the basis of such a question, but clearly our focus on what might be characterized as the micro level is recognition that it is necessary to fight and bring into organizational life Africans in every local community in the world. Ours is an international organization with an international strategy. We have actual presence not only with the presumed 40 million Africans in the United States, but with 1.5 billion Africans around the world. We are in Kenya, we are in South Africa, we're in parts of West Africa, we are all over Europe and various other places. So we have, if you say micro level or micro attention, in each of those places strategically, we recognize a responsibility to organize on the ground. What gives a particular struggle in a particular location, for example, the presumed 40 million Africans in the United States, strategical character is the fact that this struggle of the 40 million Africans in the United States are connected to the struggles of millions and millions of African people around the world, and we want the 400,000 plus people that you suggest are available to us here in the United States. So our objective is to win them all, and that's why we've opened so many doors, not only within the African community, but to other communities who want to imperialism. So the answer to that is no, we're not simply focused on some micro level.
Our next question comes from Comrade Betty Jo Soto in St. Petersburg, and it reads, can Chairman explain how the party is already functioning under a system of self-governance?
I think that the point that Comrade Betty Soto is raising is, first of all, is really important for us to say as an African Socialist Party. Our objective is to capture political power. We're not here for the dance. We're not here for just to have a demonstration or be involved in some kind of action, but to capture political power. Therefore, part of what we do is to work to actually create the economic and political institutions that will contribute to the ability of our people to be involved in self-government. We call this a struggle for dual and contending power, political power. So there are various kinds of institutions that we have created that include various tribunals and things like this, courts where African people have actually been able, in a very collective and popular fashion, to bring the enemies to court. With the now outstanding question is the creation of an instrument of force to be able to win compliance with those determinations. But we've created economic institutions. We have a massive, right now, I mention this because it's the newest and most dynamic and exciting program of the Black Power Blueprint project that's happening now in St. Louis, where the community is drawn into this process of capturing houses and capturing land and developing economic development programs on the ground. And we've done this without the intervention of the government, with the assumption that the people are the power. And we've created organizations, mass organizations from the people in the community to carry out this process. So that is a part of the struggle for self-government that we think is absolutely necessary to win our freedom. And we are creating, again, a recognition that, that politics is simply concentrated economics. And for the oppressed and the colonized, one of the reasons that we want to achieve political power, which is the expression of the politic, is so that we can liberate the productive forces of the African community and the African world, so that we can have control of the ability to feed, clothe, and house ourselves, so that we can be actively engaged in the production and reproduction of real life.
Uhuru. We have a question from Cheryl Falzone, who doesn't indicate where she's located, but the question reads, does your program involve enlightenment study to the younger generations, and if so, how young?
Well, the fact of the matter is that there are people who are and have been leading members of our party as young as 16 years old, who've actually occupied some of the offices in our national organization. There are people who participate in our work today who are 16. The director of our agitprop department, who heads all of the work, this project that's making it possible for me to be here now speaking to you, who oversees the Burning Spear newspaper, the Uhuru, the Black Power 96 and Black Power 100.1 radio stations, and all of the political and ideological development work of the entire party, has just turned 22, I think 2 days ago. So young people are important factors in our work, and we don't see the education of young people as simply something that stands outside of bringing them, drawing them into political life. We draw them into political life, and yes, we do have programs, and we are developing a youth camp that I think will be happening in 2019, where we will be drawing young African people from throughout the world into a camp of several weeks so they can have the benefit of political education and training that will help them to develop not only as young people, but as young people who are committed to the revolutionary transformation of our world.
Uhuru, at this moment, I don't see any other questions in the comments of the live feed. If we have any questions here in the audience. Alrighty, if not, we can go on to the announcements.
Hold on, were you gonna say something?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You can come.
Chairman, I know we're short on time, but my question is, right now we see the Democratic Party and all of those forces, from the white left to the black left, imperial forces out everywhere. When you go on social media, when I'm at the store, everywhere, you know, asking Africans, are you going to vote? With that, our ancestors died so we can all vote rhetoric. What is the party stance on electoral politics? And how should we be moving as party forces right now?
Well, you know, we're not opposed to people participating in electoral politics in principle. We're opposed to the assumption that electoral politics is a solution to the problem that we are suffering from. The fact of the electoral process is a part of the very same state, colonial state that oppresses African people. But we believe that we should use every avenue, any democratic avenue that's open to us to pursue the struggle for our liberation. But that means that not just going out and voting because somebody's a Negro, because somebody plays a good saxophone. It means that the work that we've done in the party with the Black is Back Coalition, for example, is one to using a process of state conventions in more than 10 states in the United States and a national convention that happened in Washington, D.C. We forged, with the people's participation, a revolutionary national program for self-determination. And this is something that we print. In fact, we're having a demonstration, a rally and demonstration in Washington, D.C. on November 3rd and 4th that everybody should come out to, where part of what we're doing is promoting this revolutionary national democratic program for self-determination. So we're saying that don't just vote, but if we can promote and push this, and what we do is enhance our position so that we are in a stronger position for the seizure of political power. And political power has to be seized. It is not going to be handed to us, but we can use the electoral process. We can alert, organize many of our people, and we can push these fake politicians or even honest opportunists to position of having to address the critical questions that confront Africans and other oppressed peoples around the world. They must say reparations. They must say black community control of the police. They must offer free education all the way up through college. They must offer such a thing as a minimum income for everybody, every person. They must raised all of the critical questions. These are things that we were fighting for. These are things that even Martin Luther King in his struggle for in terms of the Poor People's Campaign that he tried to initiate. And of course, the Black Panther Party and JOMO, the Hunter Militant Organization, all fought for revolutionary programs and not for this sops that the Democratic Party and this ersatz phony socialist, Bernie Sanders, who promised some kind of $15 per hour over a period of time, when real socialism is the capture of political power by the working class. And then the working class owns and controls the means of production and decides who should get what, whether it's $15 an hour or some other kind of economic outcome. Uhuru.
Uhuru. This study was brought to you by the Department of Agitation and Propaganda, Winning the War of Ideas. For your worldwide revolutionary news and analysis, visit theburningspear.com. For revolutionary radio, dynamic shows, and music by Africans all around the world, tune in to Black Pride 96.3 FM, broadcasting out of St. Petersburg, Florida, and accessible via the Black Pride 96 app for Apple and Android, or online at blackpride96.org. Did you unite with what you heard today and want to learn more about how you can get involved with the African People's Socialist Party? Visit apspuhuru.org for all information regarding how you can apply. Join the Freedom Mass Choir. The Freedom Mass Choir is an all-African community choir that sings songs of resistance and revolution. Members are located throughout the United States and attend weekly rehearsals, both in person and via live stream and video. Sign up mailing blackpowerchoir@gmail.com or call 727-537-6736. On November 3rd and 4th, the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations will be conducting its annual March and Rally Conference in Washington, D.C. This march is appropriately themed, "There is no and Africans are at war, U.S. to the world, comply or die." More information about this event can be found at blackisbackcoalition.org. December 9th through the 16th, come cruise with us aboard the Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise. A time for revolutionaries to kick back and relax. You'll be on board with Chairman Omali Yeshitela while getting to enjoy the spoils of the ship. Destinations include Grand Cayman, Mahogany Bay, Belize, and Cozumel, Mexico. Get signed up today at uhurulegacycruise.org. This cruise will also serve as a fundraiser for the African Socialist International. Thank you for all watching this study, and be back with us next Sunday, November 11th, 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern, for the next Omali Taught Me Uhuru.